Crystal Gayle. A voice soft as silk, brown eyes that seemed to speak, and hair so long it became an icon of an entire era of shimmering country pop. For more than half a century, she wasn't just a singer. She was the warmth of Appalachia, the longing for a poor Kentucky home, and a tenderness found nowhere else, woven into every line she sang. From a coal-dusted miner's house in Paintsville to the blazing stages of Nashville, Los Angeles, and London, Crystal Gayle rose from scarcity, from a childhood clipped short, to craft a story in which every note carries the weight of endurance. She turned quiet tremors into melody, sorrow into solace, and that delicate voice into a bridge connecting millions of hearts. Crystal Gayle was never just a vocalist. She was the embodiment of unbroken gentleness, the woman who dared to stand at the fragile line between traditional country and modern pop. With "Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue," she made the world fall silent, teaching a generation of listeners that sometimes the very aches of the heart are where the light finds a way in. Yet behind the glow lay wounds that were constant and cruel. The woman who soothed the world with her singing grew up in poverty, lost her father too young, lived her entire life in the shadow of the legendary Loretta Lynn, and ultimately had to watch her sister, her mentor, her soulmate, disappear forever. Now, in her later years, the once radiant symbol of tenderness stands in the most frightening quiet of her life, a place where music once served as salvation, yet can no longer mask the pain her heart has bled through. When the lights fade and the room falls silent, can the woman who healed the world find a way to heal herself? Before we follow the full journey of her life, a story of sorrow, pride, endurance, and the price of becoming a legend, take a moment to hit the like button and leave a heart emoji in the comments. A small gesture, but enough to send love to the woman who sang through the quietest storms and somehow managed to keep the beauty of tenderness alive in a world far too loud. Crystal Gayle was born Brenda Gayle Webb on January 9, 1951, in Paintsville, Kentucky, a place where coal dust clung to windows, to clothes, and to the childhoods of children who never had the chance to grow slowly. She was the youngest of 8 siblings, a tiny girl born into the wheezing breaths of a coal miner father, sparse meals, and a daily struggle just to hold on. Her father, Melvin Ted Webb, had worked underground for so long that his breath had become the raspy whistle of black lung. A disease everyone in the region knew was the beginning of an ending no one could escape. When Crystal was 4, the family left Appalachia, the mountains, the poverty, the only home they had ever known, and moved to Wabash, Indiana, clinging to the fragile hope that he could receive treatment. But in 1959, when Crystal was only 8, her young heart endured its first great loss. Her father died quietly, leaving her mother Clara to raise the children alone, and leaving Crystal with a hollow space inside her that she would never be able to fill. In that old miner's house, where adults left for work at dawn and returned long after dark, and where children grew up more with each other than with their parents, Crystal never truly had a childhood. She once said, "I could sing before I could walk," and people believed her. Not because it sounded poetic, but because music was the only place a poor child could feel safe. In the tiny kitchen, in the local church, on bitter winter days, Crystal's voice rose like an instinct for survival, soft but never weak, fragile but never broken. Then one evening, when her sister Loretta Lynn, already a voice drifting over the radio waves, came crackling through their small living room via an old black radio, Crystal's life changed direction. She heard her sister's voice, heard the familiar Appalachian lyrics, and understood that what she was hearing was the only path out of poverty. But admiration came with a shadow too large to ignore. From that moment on, the whole town called her Loretta's little sister, as though Crystal's destiny was meant to orbit someone else's light. Arriving in Indiana, Crystal was exposed to more cultures and more kinds of music, from gospel, folk, and pop to classic country, and all of it blended together, shaping the mist-soft yet deeply Appalachian voice she would later be known for. She recorded small demo tapes, sang in church and at school events, and then, at 16, fate opened its first real door. Loretta fell ill, and Crystal was sent to the Grand Ole Opry to sing in her place. The small, delicate girl stepped under the lights and sang "Ribbon of Darkness," with a sorrow so quiet and heavy that the entire hall fell still. For the first time in her life, she stood alone, no longer Loretta Lynn's little sister, but Crystal herself, carrying in her voice the weight of poverty, absence, tenderness, and hurt. That night, the stage lights illuminated something she never had to put into words. Music would be her destiny, and all the hardships of her childhood. The poverty, the loss of her father, the struggle of living beneath her sister's legendary shadow, were only the opening chapters of a story that would grow longer, lovelier, and far more storm-scarred than anyone could imagine. Crystal Gayle's career didn't begin with applause or dazzling stage lights. It began with fear, the fear of being seen as a copy of her sister, the fear of never escaping the enormous shadow Loretta Lynn cast over her life. After graduating high school in 1969, Crystal signed her first contract with Loretta's label, Decca Records. From the moment her pen touched the paper, she understood this road would not be easy. The label, the press, the audience, all of them wanted Crystal to repeat Loretta's formula, to deliver a little Loretta, to sing like her, stand like her, and retell the Appalachian story in the language Loretta had already mastered so perfectly that she became an icon. Even the name Brenda was deemed unsuitable, and it was only because Loretta spotted a roadside diner sign reading Crystal that the name Crystal Gayle was born. A bright, soft name carrying the hope that she might one day write her own story. But a new name wasn't enough to save her from the struggles of those early years. Her first singles, "I've Cried," "Everybody Ought to Cry," "I Hope You're Having Better Luck Than Me," were all criticized as a weaker version of Loretta. And truthfully, in the studio, Crystal often wondered if her talent was real or simply a faint echo of her sister's. It was the quietest, most painful phase of her life, when every article written about her opened with the same line, "Loretta Lynn's little sister," as if her existence held value only in relation to someone else. But then, in 1974, everything shifted. Crystal left Decca and signed with United Artists Records, a decision that was not just a professional turning point, but an act of personal liberation. There, she met producer Alan Reynolds, the first man who saw Crystal not as someone's little sister, but as a genuine artist, a woman with a voice soft as silk yet carrying a depth the industry had never heard before. Alan Reynolds told Crystal to abandon the strong Appalachian vocal style of her sister and replace it with something softer, smoother, almost whisper-like, the voice that would one day make her a legend. He told her, "Don't sing like Loretta, sing like yourself." For the first time, she was allowed to be herself. The recordings that followed, Restless, Wrong Road Again, This Is My Year for Mexico, carried a gentle, polished pop country tone, elegant and modern, opening a space entirely different from the classic country world where Loretta had found her triumph. And then, in 1976, when I'll Get Over You climbed to #1 on the country charts, Crystal knew she had finally stepped out of the shadows. That breakthrough wasn't just a commercial victory. It was a liberation. It was the moment she proved to the world and to herself that her life was not an appendix to anyone else's legend. But the peak of her early career wasn't an award or a chart position. It was the moment a song, almost forgotten and nearly handed off to someone else, found its way to her as if destiny had intervened. In 1977, songwriter Richard Lee delivered a track intended for Shirley Bassey. But Alan Reynolds stopped it and said, "No, this song belongs to Crystal." In a single session in one take, Crystal recorded "Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue," as if she were pouring out the confession of a heart that had carried too much loss. Light, soft, sorrowful, yet crystal clear. When the song was released, Nashville stood still. It hit #1 on the country charts, rose to #2 on the Billboard Hot 100, became a global hit, and opened the door for Crystal to become one of the rare crossover voices who could move effortlessly between country and pop. That was the moment everything reversed. From a poor Kentucky girl once dismissed as the copy, Crystal became an international star. The biggest stages, the most prestigious awards, the major television shows, all of them opened before her. But what no one saw was the trembling behind her early steps. Because deep down, Crystal was still the child who lost her father at 8. Still the girl standing in the wings watching her sister shine. Still the woman who had to fight silently for the right to simply be Crystal, not Loretta's little sister. And this was only the beginning of a long journey. Brilliant, yes, but also marked by pains that only she would ever have to carry. After stepping out from her sister's shadow and finding her true voice, Crystal Gayle entered a chapter in which both Nashville and Hollywood had no choice but to look up and take notice. The late 1970s opened like a fateful doorway when "Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue" first floated across the radio. No one realized they were hearing a voice that would become part of musical heritage. The song didn't just take Crystal to the top of the country charts, it crossed every boundary, shattered every limitation placed on an artist from the Appalachian Mountains. It landed in the top 5 of the Billboard Hot 100, won a Grammy, became a global hit, and carried Crystal into the ranks of the brightest crossover stars in history. It wasn't merely a song, it was a cultural moment. Audiences in the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, Japan, and across Europe all discovered Crystal through those melancholy brown eyes in the lyrics. And when stage lights shone down onto that floor-length hair, people understood an icon had been born. From 1977 through the mid-1980s, Crystal Gayle became the soul of country pop. Soft, radiant, elegant, gentle, but never weak. Talking in your sleep, half the way, ready for the times to get better. Why have you left the one you left me for? Each became a signature hit, marked by a voice capable of turning sorrow into a kind of light everyone longed to touch. In the studio, Crystal sang like she was whispering secrets only a patient heart could understand. On stage, she moved like a ribbon of silk, light, graceful, yet magnetic. She didn't need dramatic vocal theatrics or elaborate costumes. Her sweeping, floor-length hair alone could silence an entire room. Her dominance wasn't measured only by chart positions, but by the way she altered the entire sonic landscape of Nashville. Before Crystal, country music was rough-edged, dusty, steeped in the grit of mountain life. But she, guided by Alan Reynolds, brought a breath of pop into it, softening country, making it more melodic, more accessible, more universal. Crystal didn't just succeed, she helped define a new genre, modern country pop. Artists who followed, Shania Twain, Faith Hill, Trisha Yearwood, Martina McBride, all walked on the path Crystal had laid stone by stone. From 1980 to 1985, her career wasn't rising, it was soaring. Her duet, "You and I" with Eddie Rabbitt, became the soundtrack of American weddings for nearly 2 decades. Her shows sold out even before posters were finished being printed. She appeared on every major television program, talk shows, award ceremonies, domestic broadcasts, international specials. Crystal's voice became the familiar sound of late-night radio, of quiet living rooms, of long-haul trucks, of hearts searching for gentleness. And Nashville? They honored her as a queen without a crown. In those years, every young artist tried to touch the Crystal Gayle formula. Just enough pop, just enough country, just enough light, but none could replicate that soft, powerful elegance. It wasn't technique. It was soul. Crystal continued to explore, to evolve, to expand. She recorded jazz albums, nostalgia albums, inspirational albums, American standards, someday, sings the heart and soul of Hoagy Carmichael. Each one proved that her voice was never confined to a single genre. It was like water. Wherever it flowed, it became clear. Titles, awards, honors, they stretched across her brilliant journey. Grammy, American Music Awards, Country Music Association Awards, Academy of Country Music Awards, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and finally, the dream of every country artist, induction into the Grand Ole Opry in 2017. But what made people respect Crystal wasn't the number of awards. It was the way she kept her heart soft in an industry full of traps. She had no scandals, no noise, no battles for the spotlight. She chose gentleness as her path, and that choice made her a guiding light for an entire generation of women in a notoriously unforgiving business. During the brightest years of her career, Crystal didn't just represent music. She represented a way of living, gentle but never weak, soft but resilient, quiet but unbreakable. Rarely has a voice been able to comfort, uplift, and heal so many people at once. And looking back, one realizes the peak of Crystal Gayle's career wasn't just a string of hits. It was an era that only one woman could have created. Though the world knows Crystal Gayle for her floor-length hair and a voice soft as mist, her private life has always flowed in quiet, peaceful contrast to the spotlight. One of the most beautiful yet unseen parts of her story is her lifelong love with Bill Gatzimos. The man Crystal met back in high school when she was still the shy Brenda Webb who only dared to sing in church and in the cramped bedroom of a coal miner's family. Bill was not an artist, nor was he interested in chasing fame. He studied law at Vanderbilt University, a serious, practical path that had nothing to do with show business. Yet it was precisely Bill's calmness and discipline that became the steadiest anchor in Crystal's life. From her earliest uncertain steps in music to the years when she stood at the very peak of country pop. They married in 1971, and from that moment, Bill was not just a husband. He gradually became Crystal's manager, the man behind every contract, every tour, every meeting, allowing her to devote herself entirely to the one thing that made her heart move: music. When Crystal performed, Bill handled everything backstage. When Crystal gave birth, Bill stepped back from work to make sure their family never lost balance. They worked like a perfectly synced pair, discreet, quiet, without showiness, without drama, without scandal. One insider once said, "In the noise of Nashville, they were one of the few couples who never cracked." What kept them together wasn't fame, it was respect. Crystal once said, "We give each other space to breathe. That's how we've stayed together for a lifetime." When their 2 children were born, Catherine in 1983 and Christos in 1986, Crystal's life shifted in a simple, deeply personal way. She still toured, still stood under the stage lights. But between 2 shows, she would run backstage to breastfeed. She once said, "I'd finish singing, rush behind the stage to nurse the baby, then go back out again. It was hard, but that was my life." When her second child arrived, she chose to pause touring for a long stretch so she could be fully present. Crystal never let anyone else raise her children. She didn't want them growing up in the shadow of a famous mother. During their early years, she fought to keep life ordinary. Family dinners, homework, warm birthdays, even when the guitar case and tour suitcase sat by the door. On long tours, the whole family sometimes came along. The kids did homework backstage. Crystal held them as they slept during long nights on the bus rolling across state lines. A nomadic childhood, but one filled with love. When the children grew older, Bill and Crystal chose to live in a quiet Nashville home, far from press, far from media, far from anything that could take away a child's right to a normal life. Catherine grew up choosing privacy, rarely appearing in public. Christos followed a creative path, becoming a music producer, and he even co-produced Crystal's 2019 album, You Don't Know Me. For Crystal, the moment she and her son walked into the studio together, one who had once sung for the whole world, and one who grew up behind the curtains following his mother's footsteps, was a gift life rarely offers. That family, though never flashy, is woven together by bonds as tight and warm as Appalachian wood under the late afternoon sun. Crystal lives a simplicity that almost feels unbelievable for someone considered a legend. She cooks for herself, avoids fast food, prefers roasted chicken, vegetables, and fruit. When she's not performing, she wears sweaters and jeans. Her long hair is still a part of who she is, but she has never used it as a gimmick. In the evenings, she often sits at the piano or listens to her old recordings, sometimes holding photographs of Loretta Lynn and their family, as if reminding herself where she came from. In recent years, Tennessee has become where she spends most of her time. A quiet land of rolling hills, perfectly suited for a woman who has lived through a lifetime of both spotlight and shadow. Neighbors say Crystal is extremely private, rarely leaving the house, yet always polite, gentle, slow-paced, the kind of person who has seen the chaos of fame and chosen to stay far from it. After Loretta Lynn's passing, Crystal withdrew even further. She spends more time with Bill, with her children, with her grandchildren. Little ones she often lulls to sleep with the same songs their grandmother once sang to her. In her later years, the things Crystal treasures are no longer gold trophies, platinum records, or the applause that once followed her for decades. What she holds closest now is family, the only thing that has never left her. Crystal's life had no shocking scandals, no shattered romances, no dramatic downfalls, but perhaps that is why her tragedies cut deeper, because they were not loud, but quiet as running water. A childhood marked by the loss of her father, the long years of being known only as Loretta's shadow, the loneliness of an introverted artist forced to live in a noisy world, and finally, the heartbreaking pain of losing the sister, mentor, and soulmate who was the only person who truly understood her. These things were never printed in newspapers. No one discussed them. But they etched themselves into Crystal Gayle in ways that even music could never fully heal. Today, when Crystal steps onto a stage, rarely quietly, but steadily, people can feel that every note she sings is a conversation with those she loves, including the ones who are no longer here. She sings with the heart of someone who has lost so much, yet still knows how to love with everything she has left. Crystal Gayle's legacy does not lie solely in her platinum records, her chart-topping hits, or the rows of awards long covered in dust. It lives in the way she changed listeners' hearts with a sound as gentle as breath as clear as Appalachian spring water, yet as deep as the memories people never managed to put into words. When country music of the 1970s was still raw, dusty, and heavy with mountain stories, Crystal appeared like a different kind of wind, soft, smooth, sorrowful, yet full of hope. And it was she who opened the door for country to step into the world of pop without losing its soul. Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue was not just a hit. It was a lesson for every country artist on the subtlety of musical language. How a single held note can shake a heart. How sometimes the strongest force comes from the gentlest touch. After Crystal, Nashville was never the same. Female artists walked onto the stage with more freedom, more space, and more power to break out of old molds. Voices like Shania Twain, Faith Hill, Trisha Yearwood, Carrie Underwood, Casey Musgraves, all walk the path Crystal carved, where country is no longer boxed in, but becomes a bridge between tradition and the mainstream. Yet her influence extends far beyond music. Where Crystal reached deepest was in popular culture. Her floor-length hair became an icon referenced in films, television, and fashion magazines for decades. Not a flashy or rebellious symbol, but one tied to steadfastness. The idea of holding on to what you love even as the world changes. She also became the emblem of softness in show business, proof that an artist does not need noise, shock, or scandal to become a legend. Her privacy became her signature, and the very thing that earned her more respect than any title ever could. But perhaps the most beautiful legacy Crystal leaves behind isn't in the studio or on the stage. It's in the hearts of the listeners who turned on the radio in the middle of the night just to hear her voice and feel the world grow a little softer. That voice became a refuge for weary souls, for unfinished love stories, for children growing up in chaos who needed a lullaby. Crystal wasn't just a singer, she was the keeper of an entire generation's emotions. And what makes that legacy sacred is the way Crystal never asked anything from it. She didn't live off nostalgia, nor did she wear her past like a medal. For 5 decades, she did only one thing. She sang with a true heart. That is why Rolling Stone placed her among the 100 greatest country artists, why CMT ranked her among the 40 most influential women in country history, and why the Grand Ole Opry, the most sacred place in country music, eventually opened its doors to her as a belated tribute to a life lived without spectacle, yet glowing with quiet brilliance. Today, as Crystal's songs still play steadily on the radio, as younger generations seek out Brown Eyes Blue to learn how to sing softly as breath, and as new artists continue to cite her as inspiration, people finally understand that true legacy doesn't lie in temporary noise. It lies in what quietly remains long after. Crystal Gayle lived as someone who never wanted to be the center of the universe, yet somehow became one of the brightest guiding stars in the sky of American music. And like her floor-length hair, soft, resilient, refusing to be cut short, that legacy will continue to flow through time, through memory, through the hearts that once fell silent, hearing the silk-smooth Appalachian sweetness of Crystal Gayle's voice. Because true legends never disappear, they simply become sound. Today, Crystal Gayle lives a life almost entirely opposite from the one she knew during the peak of her career. Quiet, slow, and deeply contemplative. No more constant flights, no more stage lights shining on her floor-length hair, no more chasing the fast pace of Nashville she had followed since she was 16. Only a woman who has lived long enough to understand that peace is also a form of victory. She still resides in Wabash, Indiana, in the more than 7,000 square foot home she and her husband, Bill Gatsimos, built as their own private sanctuary after decades on the road. With an 18-foot living room ceiling, a redwood fireplace, and glass walls opening to a sunlit 6-acre garden, the house is more than a place to live. It is where Crystal learned how to breathe again, how to exist without hearing her hair brushing the stage floor every night. Bill, the man who has held her hand since 1971, remains the emotional backbone of her life. From a Vanderbilt law student to the quiet manager behind every contract, every tour, every career milestone, he has been there, never once stepping away. Now, as age slows them both, they live exactly like a couple who has survived every rise and fall together, cooking side by side, taking long weekend drives, sitting on the porch watching the wind move through the trees. Things that seem small, yet are treasures to someone who spent half her life under stage lights. Their 2 children, Catherine, 1983, and Christos, 1986, are now adults, living as privately as their mother always has. Christos is not only her son, but her musical soulmate, the one who helped her produce You Don't Know Me in 2019, the final project Crystal released after years of reflection, revision, and listening to what her heart told her. She said it wasn't an album made for chart success, but a gift she wanted to leave for the people who had loved her voice when they were young. Today, Crystal is a gentle grandmother, a woman who spends her afternoons teaching her grandchildren how to bake cookies, who retells old melodies passed down from her own mother, who still hums Appalachian tunes as if they were part of her family lineage, something far more precious than any gold award. After Loretta Lynn passed away in 2022, Crystal went quiet for months. She didn't explain, didn't appear publicly. She simply let the grief drain out and slowly refill itself. Her performances grew fewer. The rare interviews she accepted revolved only around memory, family, childhood, and faith. And though she still accepts shows and still sings when she wishes, everything now follows her rhythm, not the markets. She no longer has anything to prove. She has proven more than enough. On some nights, in a small historic theater in Tennessee, Crystal steps before an audience with her long silver hair falling softly under the lights. Her voice no longer soars the way it once did, but it has grown warmer, truer than ever. She smiles gently, mentions Loretta as if whispering to herself. She's probably still listening. And everyone present feels the truth. Crystal Gayle no longer sings for fame. She sings to reconnect with life, to heal herself, to keep memories alive so they never fade. Outside of music, Crystal dedicates her time to the things that bring her peace. Reading old books, decorating her home with Appalachian pottery, walking through the lush grounds behind her house, cooking simple meals, roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, fruit, the same diet she has followed for decades to keep her voice pure and her health steady. The public no longer sees Crystal every day, but that doesn't mean she has stepped away from life. She has simply chosen to live lightly, like breath, without noise, without social media, without competing for space in an increasingly chaotic musical world. And that is the freedom she spent half her life fighting to earn. Crystal Gayle today is no longer the superstar with floor-length hair who once captivated the world. She is a woman who survived the trials of poverty, the pressures of fame, the pain of irreplaceable loss, and still kept the tenderness in those brown eyes that once made the whole world fall silent. A life weathered by wind and rain, yet standing firm, quiet, graceful, and gentle, exactly the way she always sang. Looking back on Crystal Gayle's journey, we don't just see a woman who has walked through more than half a century of music. We see a life shaped by turns so sharp that even the strongest souls might have struggled to remain standing. A childhood of poverty under a miner's roof dusted with coal, the death of a father before she even understood what loss meant. The long years of being called a copy, Loretta's shadow, the quiet battles to prove her own worth. the nights on stage that stretched longer than loneliness itself, and finally the deepest wound of all, losing the sister, the mentor, the soulmate whose absence left in her a hollow no song could ever fully fill. And yet she is still here, still gentle, still singing, still smiling, with that soft, breeze-like smile, the kind that hides an entire lifetime of unsteady ground if you listen closely enough. Crystal Gayle is not a legend born of miracles. She is a legend born of sorrow, of the ability to withstand all the things that glamour never talks about, of the resilience of a woman who chose gentleness even when life was anything but gentle to her, of the decision to answer every wound not with anger, but with melody. At this age, she no longer seeks the spotlight. She seeks peace. She no longer runs toward the stage. She runs toward family. She no longer stands amid applause. She stands in the middle of memories, where Loretta's voice still echoes like a whisper that will never fade. And it is in that quiet that Crystal Gayle shines in a different way. Not brightly, but deeply. Not overwhelmingly, but touchingly. Not loudly, but with the durability of a thread that has stitched together her entire life. Because in the end, music does not need to be loud to be immortal. It only needs to be true. Crystal sang with her whole heart, and sometimes that heart was overflowing with things no one else could see. But it is exactly that honesty that creates a legacy nothing can erase. When we listen to Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue Again, we're not just hearing a song. We're hearing our own youth. We're hearing old wounds. We're hearing the comfort we didn't know we needed until many years later. And above all, we hear the silhouette of a woman who walked through storms with a softness the world underestimated. Crystal Gayle, the voice of unbroken gentleness, of things never spoken aloud, and of a strength only hearts that have suffered can understand. Before you leave, drop a heart emoji in the comments. A small thank you to the woman who sang through the storms of her own life so she could bring peace to the storms within ours. And if you want to keep journeying through true stories that are beautiful yet painful, gentle yet merciless, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because legends like Crystal Gayle, they don't disappear. They simply echo longer in the hearts of those who are willing to listen.